So it's really important that Republicans at their convention be allowed to protect themselves. So please go to change.org, search for Republican Guns Convention, and sign the petition so that we can help our Republican friends protect themselves and have a safe convention. Thank you.
Tonight we have Dr. Stephen Butler. He's going to talk about should Texas Governor Abbott be impeached. He's a professor of history. He'll argue that by ordering the removal of a healthy display from the state capitol, which had been placed there by the Freedom from Religion Foundation with permission of the State Preservation Board, Texas Governor Gregg Abbott violated his oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, as well as the Constitution of the State of Texas, and thereby committed an impeachable offense. The display wishing passersby a happy winter solstice depicted founding fathers Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington, as well as the Statue of Liberty, reverently admiring a newborn Bill of Rights. Butler holds that Abbott's order was not only the act of a tyrant and a bully, but also ironic in light of the fact that the Bill of Rights, which the display was meant to celebrate, is where a right to freedom of speech, the right for which the governor apparently has no respect, is enshrined. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Stephen Butler. Watch your step here.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
can you feed that back up? Want everybody to see my shirt?
Free speech.
All right. Also an advertisement for my new publishing company. All right. I'm going to make my own recording here too, voice recording. Get that going. Okay, good evening. Good evening. We meet again.
Are we good? I didn't mean to start.
You did.
I started ahead of my shouldn't have done
Okay, he's not quite set up yet?
that. No.
Okay. I won't say anything then. Just yet. Let me know when you're ready to roll.
Anytime.
Yeah?
Carry on.
Okay. Before I begin this evening, I want to let you all know that I have a limited supply, in fact, Impeach Abbott bumper stickers, which I will give absolutely free to the first 4 people who ask for them. Now, there they are. All right. See me at the end of the presentation if you want one of those. I'll try to remember to remind you at the end of the presentation. This thing's kind of right in my face here. Any way to keep that? There we go. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Well, the principal topic of tonight's presentation is the freedom of speech. And I think that should be one that is near and dear to the hearts of everybody here tonight. After all, freedom of speech, or free speech, is what the College of Complexes is all about. A forum where anyone can say just about anything about any subject without fear of censorship or retribution. Okay, so my presentation tonight is about something that happened this past December that involves Gregg Abbott, the governor of the state of Texas, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a nonprofit organization based in Madison, Wisconsin. Presently, there are about 1,000 FFRF, I'm just going to refer to the Freedom from Religion Foundation by their initials from here on in. There are about 1,000 members here in Texas, and I am one of them. Now, before I go any further, I want to make it clear that although I am a dues-paying member of the aggrieved organization, that is the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm here tonight as a private citizen of the state of Texas, and not as an official representative of the FFRF. And while I certainly agree with the views of the FFRF in its lawsuit against the governor, except where I quote from that suit or from some other FFRF source, the opinions expressed in this presentation are my own and not officially endorsed by anyone else. Okay, so I'm guessing that some of you may not be familiar with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So I'm going to give you some explanatory material from the organization's website. And this is verbatim from the website. First of all, what is the Freedom from Religion Foundation? Incorporated in 1978 in Wisconsin, the foundation is a national membership association of approximately 23,000 freethinkers, atheists, agnostics, and skeptics of any pedigree. The foundation is a nonprofit, tax-exempt educational organization under Internal Revenue Code 501c3. All dues and contributions are deductible for income tax purposes. The purposes of the Freedom from Religion Foundation Incorporated, as stated in its bylaws, are to promote the constitutional principle of separation of church and state, and to educate the public on matters relating to non-theism. Now, there is, in the frequently asked questions section of their website, there's a question that says, why is the foundation concerned with state/church entanglement? And here is the answer they wrote. First Amendment violations are accelerating. The religious right is campaigning to raid the public till and advance religion at taxpayer expense, attacking our secular public schools, the rights of non-believers, and the Establishment Clause, that is, of the Constitution. The foundation recognizes that the United States was first among nations to adopt a secular constitution. The founders who wrote the U.S. Constitution wanted citizens to be free to support the church of their choice or no religion at all. Our Constitution was very purposely written as a godless document whose only references to religion are exclusionary. It is vital to buttress the Jeffersonian wall of separation between church and state, which has served our nation so well. Now, here's one more little section from the website. What are the foundation's accomplishments? The foundation and its staff attorneys act on countless violations of separation of state and church on behalf of members and the public, including prayers in public schools, payment of funds for religious purposes, government funding of pervasively sectarian institutions, and the ongoing campaign against civil rights for women, gays, and lesbians led by churches. Okay, so now you know what the Freedom from Religion Foundation is and what they do. So, next question might be, and I'm not quoting anybody now, what happened? In 2014, the Texas Nativity Scene Project received permission from the State Preservation Board to place a Christmas creche or nativity scene in the basement of the Capitol Rotunda, that is the Capitol in Austin, Texas. The display was sponsored by State Representative John, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. It's spelled F-R-U-L-L-O, so I don't know if it's Frullo or Fruyo. Anyway, he's a Republican from Lubbock. Apparently, this was the first time that such a display had been placed on the Capitol grounds, and there were no other holiday displays of any kind placed in or on the Capitol grounds at that time, to the best of my knowledge, apart from a large Christmas tree that is annually erected in the chamber of the House of Representatives. In 2015, the Texas Nativity Scene Project again received permission to erect their Christmas creche at the state capitol. That same year, the Freedom from Religion Foundation also sought and received permission from the State Preservation Board to erect a holiday display at the Texas State Capitol to represent the views of non-theistic Texans like me. The 4-foot-tall cardboard display depicted the Statue of Liberty and founding fathers Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington admiring a newborn Bill of Rights lying in a cradle. And I was wondering if I could get somebody to hand out these handouts, which have a picture of the display in question, along with a sign that was accompanied it. This display, sponsored by State Representative Donna Howard, a Democrat from Austin, was placed in the basement of the Capitol Rotunda on December 18th by Texas members of the FFRF. A nearby sign called attention to the fact that the Bill of Rights was ratified and became a part of the United States Constitution on December 15th, 1791. It also expressed support for separation of church and state and wished passersby a happy winter solstice. The sign also called attention to the fact that it was a private display, not endorsed by the state. Those were quotation marks. In contrast to the FFRF display, which was placed in the Rotunda basement where very few people were likely to see it, the Texas Nativity Scene Project's Christmas Creche, sponsored by State Representative Frullo, or Frullo, however his name is pronounced. The Christmas creche was erected at the main entrance to the Capitol building. And if any of you have ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. You walk up the hill past all the monuments and you walk in the front door. It was right there at the bottom of the steps near the front door. So this was a much more favorable and visible location. The Christmas creche had a much more favorable and visible location. At the dedication ceremony, Representative Frullo demonstrated his ignorance of American history by perpetuating the right-wing myth that our government is founded upon Christianity, which both the United States Constitution and the 1796 Treaty of Tripoli make clear it is not. His remarks, as reported in his hometown paper, were, "What we see here in front of us is the foundation of our nation. The nativity scene is the moral fabric of our country." On December 22nd, 2015, only 3 or 4 days after the FFRF display was placed in the Capitol Rotunda basement, on that date, after he learned of the presence of the FFRF display in the Capitol basement, Governor Abbott immediately wrote a letter to John Snead, Executive Director of the State Preservation Board, in which he urged Snead, quote, "to remove this display from the Capitol immediately," end of quote. In his letter, Abbott complained that the FFRF display allegedly showed Washington, Jefferson, and Franklin worshiping the Bill of Rights, quote, "as a replacement for Jesus Christ," unquote. He also called the display, quote, "juvenile," and said that it mocked Christians and Christianity and therefore did not meet the legal standards for the approval of public displays that promote a public purpose. Furthermore, Abbott claimed that the display, quote, "does not educate it," and that it, quote, "promotes ignorance and falsehood." Abbott also described the FFR display as, quote, "indecent," comparing it to a controversial 1987 photograph of a crucifix immersed in a jar of urine called Piss Christ. which had been publicly funded by the National Endowment for the Arts. Now keep in mind, and you've all seen what this display looks like, I don't think this display in any way, my personal opinion is, this display in no way compares to that so-called work of art that Abbott referenced. Also, this is a private display. It was not paid for by any taxpayer money or anything like that either. Ironically, in his letter to Snead, Abbott displayed his own ignorance and promoted falsehood by quoting from George Washington's prayer book, which experts long ago determined neither belonged to nor was written by Washington. Here is what Fred Edwards of the American Humanist Association said about this supposed Washington prayer book in 2014. I'm quoting, "The words come from a book commonly called Washington's Prayer Journal, although its actual title is The Daily Sacrifice. The work has been claimed a product of Washington's youth up to age 20, which alone might render it irrelevant, even if genuine, for it is Washington's mature adult views on religion that should logically interest us the most. The original document is handwritten, numbering 24 pages in a pocket memo book. Nothing on the item indicates that it belonged to George Washington. His name isn't on it or anything. But after Lawrence Washington, a descendant, found it in an old trunk in 1890, he gave specialists a chance to look at it. Historian Franklin Steiner would later write in 1936, Worthington C. Ford, who had handled more of Washington's manuscripts than any other man except Washington himself, declared that the penmanship was not that of Washington. Moreover, Washington was notorious as a poor speller, yet the spelling in the prayer book is quite correct. The document was also submitted to the Smithsonian, where the handwriting was again analyzed along with other characteristics. The manuscript was rejected once more for not being authentic. Later, Dr. W.A. Crawford, a Washington, D.C. newspaper correspondent, put the final nail in the coffin when he traced some of the prayers back to at least the reign of English King James I, who died 107 years before George Washington was born. So therefore, they could not have been original to Washington. I think we also have to ask ourselves this. If Washington was such a devout Christian as Abbott contends, then why did he always get up and leave church services whenever communion was served? A devout Christian would have eaten the wafers and drank the wine. History records that Washington did not. Whether or not the governor has or had any knowledge of the beliefs of Franklin or Jefferson is unknown, but it is interesting that he focused only on Washington and said nothing of the other two, who were both self-identified deists that believed in a creator God but did not subscribe to the supernatural tenets of the Christian faith. The governor's argument is likewise disingenuous because non-religious Texans such as me could just as easily say that the Christian nativity scene promotes ignorance and falsehood by encouraging belief in a fantastic story for which there is no contemporary supporting evidence outside of the Bible, a notoriously unreliable source. In the closing remarks of his letter to Snead, Abbott wrote that, quote, diverse viewpoints, unquote, should be allowed, quote, should be allowed to be expressed in capital display, but, unquote, but obviously he does not really mean it. It's also interesting to note as well that during the entire 3 or 4 days the display was in the Capitol basement, not one person is known to have complained about it except Governor Abbott. Now here are some reactions to the governor's demand. Not surprisingly, Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick defended Abbott, saying, quote, I believe this mocking exhibit was approved in error and the State Preservation Board is under no obligation to support or allow displays intentionally disrespectful to others. The press was divided. On Houston's Fox 26 Roundup, one of the program's 3 regular news commentators, Mustafa Tamiz, said that he thought the FFRF display was, quote, insensitive, and so I'm with the governor on this, unquote. Another one of the regular commentators, Jackie Bailey, said, quote, I think they're making a mockery of Christianity, adding, quote, I think the governor did the right thing. Chris Tritico, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the only one of the 3 TV journalists to express an unfavorable opinion of the governor's actions, said, quote, I don't think the governor of Texas has the authority to say the First Amendment only applies when I say it does. The editorial board of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram defended the display, saying, quote, the display did educate. Its sign contained information about the adoption of the Bill of Rights. It had a public purpose to remind people of separation of church and state, and it didn't promote falsehoods. Nowhere did it say that the Founding Fathers worshiped the Bill of Rights. All of Abbott's allegations stemmed from the interpretation of the display. The FFRF scene could be seen as a mockery of Christianity or as a representation of the importance of the Bill of Rights. The Founding Fathers wanted to protect religious freedom, even religion not aligned with their own personal faith. The display could be interpreted as a representation of that idea. Bill of Rights protections often make people uncomfortable. This display should have come under the First Amendment protection. Abbott's urging its removal was simply wrong. Bloggers for the Waco Tribune and the Dallas Morning News likewise condemned the governor's actions and defended the right of the FFRF to have a display in the Capitol. Not surprisingly, the Freedom from Religion Foundation has filed a lawsuit against both the governor and John Snead in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas in Austin. The suit, which asks for both injunctive and compensatory relief, states in Section 1, nature of the claims, that, quote, the defendants have violated the plaintiff's free speech, equal protection, and due process rights, and that the defendants have violated the Establishment Clause by removing and excluding the plaintiff's protected speech, a display from a public forum, because of the content of the plaintiff's speech, unquote, and also that, quote, the defendant's actions were not viewpoint neutral or reasonable, and they were also motivated by animus toward the content of plaintiff's protected speech and the identity of the speaker, unquote. This leaves us with a question. Did the governor act improperly? Well, first let's answer another question. Was the FFRF display protected by the U.S. and Texas constitutions? Short answer, yes. In the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which is part of the very same Bill of Rights that the FFRF display was celebrating, freedom of speech is specifically protected, and I'm sure everybody here is familiar with that, with the First Amendment. It is likewise protected by the Texas Constitution, which states in Article 1, Section 8, quote, every person shall be at liberty to speak, write, or publish his opinions on any subject, being responsible for the abuse of that privilege, and no law shall ever be passed curtailing the liberty of speech or of the press, end of quote. Although it is true that the freedom of speech is not absolute, for example, the freedom of speech does not include the right to incite actions that would harm others, to make or distribute obscene materials. Federal courts have ruled that the freedom of speech does include the right to use offensive words and phrases, to convey political messages, and to engage in symbolic speech. And I got that straight from the Supreme Court website, by the way. Now let's answer these questions. Did the FFRF display incite any harmful actions? No. I think it's pretty obvious it didn't. Was it obscene? Again, you've got pictures of it. If anybody thinks that's obscene, then I don't know what to think. No, obviously it's not. Was it symbolic speech? Absolutely. Was it offensive to others? Well, that depends on the observer. Most Americans on both the left and the right reverence the Bill of Rights as well as admire our founding fathers, particularly Washington, Jefferson, and Franklin. But even if the display was offensive to the governor, that gave him no right to have it removed. Here's a quote from the 19th century British philosopher and political economist John Stuart Mill that seems to fit this situation perfectly, and I'm really sorry that John Beasley isn't here tonight to hear me quote John Stuart Mill, because I know he'd like that. Here's the quote. "The peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race, posterity as well as the existing generation. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If wrong, they lose what is almost as great a benefit, the clearer perception and livelier perception of truth, produced by its collision with error." Mill goes on to say, "The opinion which it is attempted to suppress by authority may possibly be true. Those who desire to suppress it, of course, deny its truth, but they are not infallible. They have no authority to decide the question for all mankind and exclude every other person from the means of judging. To refuse a hearing to an opinion because they are sure that it is false is to assume that their certainty is the same thing as absolute certainty. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility." End of quote. Well, in addition to the display being protected by the First Amendment and the Texas Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment also applies. It reads, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. It is therefore clear that by ordering the nativity scene to remain on the Capitol grounds while ordering the removal of the secular display, likewise, Abbott violated this amendment as well. It is equally clear that by this action, he also violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which separates church and state. Even though the Christmas creche was constructed using private funds, its placement on public property to the exclusion of any other displays makes it obvious that Abbott was giving unconstitutional preference to the Christian religion. Finally, there is the demonstrable fact that Governor Abbott is not only openly hostile to secular points of view, but to the FFRF specifically, as evidenced by several actions taken by the governor, which are listed in the FFRF's lawsuit. And I happen to get a copy of the lawsuit. It's freely available online, by the way, as are all of Abbott's letters. Hooray for the internet. I'm reading now from Article 7 of the lawsuit. It says, Governor Abbott has history of animus towards FFRF. And it starts with item 64. Governor Abbott has a history of hostility directed towards FFRF. Item 65. In December of 2011, for example, Governor Abbott actually warned the FFRF to stay out of Texas altogether, stating, quote, "Our message to the atheist is don't mess with Texas and our nativity scenes or the Ten Commandments." Number 66. Governor Abbott made his comments to Fox News and commentary when he was the Texas Attorney General. 67. At that time, Governor Abbott further proclaimed, quote, I want the Freedom from Religion Foundation to know that our office has a history of defending religious displays in this state. 68. Governor Abbott further stated that the FFRF should be fully aware that, quote, there is a person, a lawyer, and an organization in this state that has their back, that has the law, that has the muscle and the firepower to go toe-to-toe with these organizations that come from out of state trying to bully governmental bodies into tearing things down like nativity scenes. 69. In light of Governor Abbott's more recent demand that FFRF's display at the state capitol be torn down, the governor's prior comments about bullying seem ironic but are consistent with his repeated endorsements of religion over non-belief. Item number 70. Governor Abbott, for example, also attacked FFRF during a press conference in October 2012, during which he stated, quote, we will not allow atheist groups from outside of the state of Texas to come into the state to use menacing and misleading intimidation tactics to try to bully schools to bow down at the altar of secular beliefs. Item 71. During the press conference in October 2012, Governor Abbott contemptuously described FFRF as, quote unquote, or quote, a atheist group from Wisconsin who came into the state of Texas and tried to silence these students. 72. Governor Abbott further expressed his self-styled respect for freedom of speech in terms that are curious and telling in the circumstances. We are not, this is quoting Abbott, we are not going to either tolerate or accept these atheist groups trying to prevent that freedom of expression here in the state of Texas. 73. More recently, Governor Abbott came to the defense of the Brewster County Sheriff's Office, including the alleged right to display a Latin cross on department vehicles following a complaint by the FFRF. 74. Governor Abbott, through his spokesman, John Whitman, stated in December 2015 that, quote, the Constitution demands respect for religious expression rather than hostility towards it, and Governor Gregg Abbott fully supports Sheriff Dodson's decision to allow his deputies to display a cross in their patrol vehicles. 75. Governor Abbott subsequently sent a memorandum to the chair of the Opinion Committee within the Office of the Attorney General favoring the display of such Latin crosses on Sheriff Department vehicles. 76. Governor Abbott argued that religious expression by public officials acting in official roles should be allowed, including because Americans allegedly are religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being. 77. Governor Abbott also expressed support for the city of Orange, Texas, which removed a nativity scene from City Hall after FFRF simply requested to put up a banner as well. 78. Governor Abbott encouraged the city of Orange to continue to display a nativity scene without allowing FFRF's banner as well, stating that, quote, the Constitution demands accommodation of religion rather than hostility towards it. 79. Governor Abbott has consistently advocated for displays of religion in the public sphere while actively opposing any expression of non-religious principles. That's the end of that section of the lawsuit. Okay, so, personally, it appears to me that what Governor Abbott is doing is the same what many other Christians are doing, not only here in Texas, but elsewhere across the nation. And that is misinterpreting the FFRF's challenge to what is commonly known as Christian privilege as a challenge to Christian beliefs. That is most assuredly not the case. Although it is a given that leaders and members of the FFRF are atheist or largely atheist, and are therefore convinced that all religious beliefs, not just Christian, are erroneous, no one is attacking the constitutional right of any American citizen to believe what they want or to practice their faith. What the FFRF and similar groups, such as Americans United for Separation of Church and State, are doing is challenging the notion that just because Christians are in the majority, they automatically have an inherent right to promote their beliefs using public money, to erect religious displays on public property, and to enjoy special favors from the government. According to various polls, that on account of these challenges, many Christians believe they are being persecuted for their faith, and that religious liberty in the United States is on the decline. Such claims are ridiculous in the extreme. Persecution is not about having your privileges challenged or your dogma questioned. It is about suffering some very real and serious consequences. In some foreign nations, Christians are being imprisoned, tortured, and even killed on account of their faith. Nothing of the sort is happening here in the United States. A big part of the problem is that many Christians, including apparently our present governor, are so accustomed to Christian privilege being an integral part of our society that they simply can't see what is as plain as the nose on their face. In case you are unfamiliar with Christian privilege, I found a list online that gives more than 30 examples of it. And here it is. This is from a website. It's from an article. It was actually written by social justice comedian Sam Killerman. And so I'm reading his words here. These aren't my words, although I might add a couple of things here. He says here, if you're a Christian in the U.S., these are a bunch of unearned benefits you get that members of other faiths or non-religious people do not. Says if you identify as a Christian, there's a good chance you've never thought about these things. So here's the list. Number 1, you can expect to have time off work to celebrate religious holidays. 2, music and television programs pertaining to your religion's holidays are readily accessible. 3, it is easy to find stores that carry items that enable you to practice your faith and celebrate religious holidays. And I'm going to throw in one of my own here. It also seems to me, because I go to bookstores a lot, that when I go into my local Barnes & Noble, one of the first things I notice when I go over to the little tiny atheist section is that there are 3 or 4 aisles of Christian books. And a couple of them are labeled Christian fiction. You know, if it's up to me, they'd all be labeled that. But in any case, they've got 3 or 4 aisles of stuff. The atheists have a little tiny section, you know, down near the bottom shelf. The Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus don't do much better in that regard. And, you know, it also occurred to me that Christians even have not only large sections of established bookstores, they even have their own bookstores. Number 4, I'm going back to the other guy's list here. You aren't pressured to celebrate holidays from another faith that may conflict with your religious values. Number 5, holidays celebrating your faith are so widely supported, you can often forget they are limited to your faith. And so you wish somebody a Merry Christmas or a Happy Easter without considering their faith. Number 6, you can worship freely without fear of violence or threats. Number 7, a bumper sticker supporting a religion won't likely lead to your car being vandalized. Number 8, you can practice your religious customs without being questioned, mocked, or inhibited. Number 9, if you are tried in court, you can assume that the jury of your peers will share your faith and not hold that against you in weighing decisions. Number 10, when swearing an oath, you will place your hand on a religious scripture pertaining to your faith. 11, positive references to your faith are seen dozens of times a day by everyone regardless of their faith. Number 12, politicians responsible for your governance are probably members of your faith. Number 13, politicians can make decisions citing your faith without being labeled as heretics or extremists. Number 14, it is easy for you to find your faith accurately depicted in television, movies, books, and other media. Number 15, you can reasonably assume that everyone you encounter will have a decent understanding of your beliefs. Number 16, you will not be penalized socially or otherwise for not knowing other people's religious customs. Number 17, your faith is accepted/supported at your workplace. 18, you can go into any career you want without it being associated with or explained by your faith. Number 19, you can travel to any part of the country and know your religion will be accepted, safe, and you will have access to religious spaces to practice your faith. Number 20, your faith can be an aspect of your identity without being a defining aspect. That is, people won't think of you as their Christian friend. 21, you can be polite, gentle, or peaceful and not be considered an exception to those practicing your faith. 22, fundraising to support congregations of your faith will not be investigated as potentially threatening or terrorist behavior. Number 23, construction of places of worship will not likely be halted due to your faith. 24, you are never asked to speak on behalf of all the members of your faith. Number 25, you can go anywhere and assume you will be surrounded by members of your faith. Number 26, without special effort, your children will have a multitude of teachers who share your faith. 27, without special effort, your children will have a multitude of friends who share your faith. 28, it is easily accessible for you or your children to be educated from kindergarten through postgraduate institutions of your faith. Number 29, disclosing your faith to an adoption agency will not likely prevent you from being able to adopt children. Almost to the end here. 30, in the event of a divorce, the judge won't immediately grant custody of your children to your ex because of your faith. 31, your faith is taught or offered as a course at most public institutions. 32, you can complain about your religion being under attack without it being perceived as an attack on another religion. 33, you can completely dismiss the idea that identifying with your faith bears certain privileges. I'm also going to add one more. I've got to reach into my pocket here. Hang on. I'm going to put this back on. Money. Don't get excited. I'm not handing this out. What does it say here on the back? In God we trust. Those words were not added to our currency until 1957 during the Cold War hysteria. I'd like to know, why should I, as a non-believer, be forced to carry money that bears a religious inscription that insults me by implying that belief in God is necessary to being a patriotic American or a good citizen? This is one of the reasons why nowadays I use a debit card more often than cash, because my debit card does not bear the inscription, "In God we trust." Okay. Question: should the governor be impeached? By ordering the removal of the FFRF display and allowing the Christian nativity scene to remain, the governor has demonstrated his contempt for the constitutions of both the United States and the state of Texas, both of which not only guarantee freedom of speech, but also equal treatment under the law. What makes this an impeachable offense, in my opinion, is the fact that when he took office, the governor took an oath to uphold both the federal and state constitutions. And here is what he actually said on January 20th, 2015, when he took the oath of office to become the 48th governor of the state of Texas, and you can find this on YouTube. He said, "I, Gregg Abbott, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of governor of the state of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God." Gregg Abbott has proven by his actions and his opinions that he is a tyrant, a bully, and that he has no respect for the constitutions of either the United States or the state of Texas. And for those reasons, I hold that he is unfit to continue in office, and I say, impeach him, find him guilty, and throw him out. Now, next question. Can the governor be impeached? Because you might be wondering. The Texas Constitution, I checked, allows for the impeachment of any high-ranking state official. Furthermore, the state constitution does not narrowly define an impeachable offense, as does the U.S. Constitution, which requires that the offending party be suspected of high crimes and misdemeanors. Under the Texas Constitution, an impeachable offense can be anything the Texas House of Representatives deems it to be. I certainly think that the governor's demonstrated contempt for the oath that he took to uphold both the U.S. and Texas constitutions, which include freedom of speech and equal treatment under the law, is reason enough for charges to be brought and for there to be a trial by the Senate, and if found guilty, for removal from office. Okay, well, here's another question yet. Will the governor be impeached? Because the Texas state legislature is presently dominated by a majority of right-wing conservative Christian good old boys, whose opinions are either the same or very similar to the governor's, I think the likelihood of Abbott actually being impeached is highly unlikely. Sadly, what this tells me is that our legislature is dominated by people who really have no respect for either the state or federal constitution or the rule of law, except when it suits them. I think, too, that this unfortunate situation is the result of the sort of government we have here in Texas, which gives a distinct advantage to rich folks in terms of holding office. Who among us here tonight enjoys the sort of financial security that it takes to be able to serve in the legislature for 140 days every 2 years for the paltry sum of $600 per month, or $7,200 per year, plus a per diem of $150 per day for every day the legislature is in session? Well, I know I certainly can't afford to run for state office, and also, as an atheist, I suffer the additional liability of being banned from holding state office, because the Texas Constitution states in Article 1, Section 4, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification for any office or public trust in this state, nor shall anyone be excluded from holding office on account of his religious sentiments, provided he acknowledge the existence of a supreme being. I think this situation, the government that we have, is also due to the apparent ignorance and lack of critical thinking skills demonstrated by the majority of Texas voters, not to mention their apathy. In the election in which Abbott won office with 2,796,547 votes, which was 59.3% of the total, only 33.9% of registered voters actually cast a ballot. I think everyone here will agree that's a pretty poor turnout. Here's my closing statement. At the end of the day, this is not just about non-theistic Texans standing up for our constitutional right to freedom of speech. It is also about equality. During the civil rights era of the 1950s and 60s, Southern whites often accused black people of wanting special privileges. I know. I was around back then, and I remember hearing such comments. But nothing could have been further from the truth. What black people wanted was not special privileges, but simply to be treated the same as everyone else. By doing so, they challenged the status quo of white privilege. Consequently, they were denounced by whites who were either unable or unwilling to see that the demands that blacks were making were reasonable and just. Today, we atheists are making the same sorts of demands. We do not want special treatment. We simply want equal treatment. If that means that Christians will have to give up the undeserved and unconstitutional special privileges they have enjoyed for far too long, then so be it. This nation was founded on the principle of equality. It is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and also in the Constitution, which creates no special privileges for anyone. Even if you disagree with me about religion, if you have any respect for this nation's and this state's foundational documents, you will agree that everyone has as much right as the next person to express his or her views, and that no government official should be allowed to censor anyone simply because that official disagrees. Thank you. Oh, question time.
Yeah, you get to stay there and answer questions now. You're gonna say the word first.
Well, I think you made a good point about the lawsuit against Abbott. Sorry, someone else is talking right now.
I can hear you.
I think you made a good point and a good case for the lawsuit against Abbott. The thing I question, I was really completely 100% on your side as far as the lawsuit until I began learning about the history of this debate. That this is not one incident, this is actually a long string of incidents over time that Abbott is responding to. Now, while I think his action was inappropriate, you're saying that the FFRS is what? It's a free speech organization?
It's an organization that seeks to enforce the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, which calls for separation of church and state. What they often do is they file lawsuits, or they ask people. They don't file a lawsuit first. They first ask a city, a school, district, whatever it might be, that is allowing religious activities or things of that nature, maybe religious slogans, banners, whatever, to be placed on public property that's taxpayer supported. That's what they're upset about, and that's what I'm upset about. I believe, and I know the FFRF does too, because they made it pretty clear, that taxpayers' money should not be used to support or promote someone's religious beliefs. That public spaces should be religiously neutral, not pushing anybody's religion. And so that's basically what they're trying to do. But what often causes problems is that Christians like Abbott, for example, misinterpret that as an attack on their beliefs, saying, oh, you don't want us to express our religious liberty. Well, no, that's not exactly it. The FFRF has never asked anyone to take down a nativity scene on church property or on a private lawn. What we're talking about is nativity scenes, for example, on a courthouse lawn, or the lawn of a public library, or some other thing that is supported by taxpayer money. Go ahead.
Okay, 2 questions. First of all, can you confirm that you said Thomas Jefferson was a deist?
That is correct.
Okay, second of all, just for those of us who might be a little bit,
Fuzzy?
Fuzzy, can you distinguish between deism, Christianity, and any other religion such as Judaism? And the other thing I would ask is why can't there be a Star of David here too? I mean, in other words, you're not going to see, and there's not equal.
That's exactly, you're exactly right.
And,
that's right.
It's not, I mean, with all of our other religions, that you don't see any other preferential.
Exactly. This is one of the points.
And why exactly? That is what one of
Right.
our great founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, one of my favorites, had in
One of mine
mind.
too. Well, let me answer your first question. You want to know what a deist is? A deist is, and you don't see too many deists anymore. At least I don't. A deist is someone who this was a product of the Enlightenment. in the 1700s, early 1800s. Thomas Paine was also a deist. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, three of our most famous founding fathers. They weren't alone, but of our founding fathers, we know they were deists because they said they were. And a deist is someone who believes that God created the universe and everything in it, including people, and then stepped back and let it all run on its own steam. The deists do not believe in revealed religion. They don't subscribe to holy text or dogma or tenets or anything like that. Let me tell you what Thomas Jefferson did very famously. Have you ever heard of the Jefferson Bible?
Yes.
Yep.
Some of you have, maybe some of you haven't. The Jefferson Bible was exercise that Thomas Jefferson undertook when he was president, and he did this again when he was in his retirement years. He took 4 Bibles, one in Latin, one in Greek, one in French, and one in English, and he took a razor blade to them, and he cut out all the parts that he thought were good moral guidance and left out and then threw away all the supernatural stuff. He did not believe that Jesus was born of a virgin. He didn't believe Jesus performed a single miracle. He did not believe in the resurrection. He said, I'm a Christian in the sense that I follow the teachings of Christ, but I'm not a Christian in the sense that I accept all the Christian dogma. And so by most Christian standards, Jefferson wasn't a Christian. Not a traditional Christian, certainly not. And Thomas Paine and Ben Franklin were similar, although I don't think, I heard Thomas Paine actually wrote a critique of the Bible called The Age of Reason, and I recommend it as good reading. And you were asking, you're talking about equal treatment for other religions. Yeah, I'd like to know that too. Why wasn't there, a menorah on the Capitol lawn or in the basement as well? You know, the Freedom of Religion Foundation, let me tell you how they operate. If what they try to do is remove religion from the public taxpayer-supported sphere, if they're unsuccessful in doing that, then they insist on equal treatment. And that's why they wanted to put that holiday display there, because they knew the Christians were going to put in their Christmas crash. I don't know if any Jewish group applied to put up a menorah or anything, or anybody else applied to put up anything else. I have no idea. Those 2 displays, the creche and the Freedom from Religion Foundation display, are the only ones I'm aware of. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
My first one was real easy, so I'm going to take more than one. How long were you planning to leave that display up if it wasn't interfered with? And how long did the Christian one stay up?
I assumed, I don't actually know the exact answer to that question, I assumed through the holiday season. And then they would both come down. I would imagine probably, I don't know, New Year's Day maybe, I'm just guessing. But the Christian creche was allowed to stay for the rest of the holiday season, and the FFRF display was taken down after only 2 or 3 days.
My next one's a little more tricky.
Okay.
Did I detect a favoring of the Muslims in America from you?
No, you did not.
Because I thought I did.
No.
Because they seem to be...
I don't favor any religion.
They
I
seem
think
to
all
be-
religions are equally erroneous.
I did hear you say something about Christian right suppressing women, gays, and all kinds of people. It seems like the Muslims are really into that.
They're also not the majority in this country either.
Well, yeah, okay. Well,
So I was talking about the majority group, of which Governor Abbott is a member. And that's why I didn't have anything to say about the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Jains, anybody else. I was focusing on Abbott because he's a Christian, and the Christians are the majority. Anybody else?
Tom?
Any differentiation between the terms separation of church and state?
in state and church?
Can hear
You want me to differentiate between those two? I don't, personally, don't think there's any difference. It's just a matter of where you put the words.
Transposed to here, you've got state and church instead of church and state.
Well,
I thought maybe it missed.
there's no hidden meaning. You can do it either way, you know.
It does to me.
Either way, they're separate, or they should be.
Well, Professor Butler, is it?
Yes?
I believe the God of the Ten Commandments agrees with your anti-theism. He says, "Thou
Really?
shalt have no other gods before me."
That's true. You know, I always wondered about that. If there's only one God, then why did he say that? That implies there's lots of gods.
Well, there must have been at that time. Now, would you characterize atheism as a belief system?
No, it's a non-belief system.
What is it based upon?
What is it based upon? Atheists generally do not believe in anything for which there is no supportive evidence. Faith, on the other hand, is belief in things for which there is no supporting evidence.
So, are you making that argument upon reason?
Well, yes, and my own faculties.
And do you ascribe to the scientific method?
Absolutely.
If a theorem has one case in which it has been falsified or disproven, what does that say about that theorem?
It generally implies that it's false.
I would put it to you that atheism is of that character.
Oh, really? And how so?
When you have people returning from being dead, clinically dead, and having experiences of things they could not have known.
Did you hear about the man who recently reported that he was declared clinically dead? His heart stopped beating and everything, and you know what he reported? He said, "I didn't see anything. No lights, nothing." And here's something else too, by the way. You made me think of something. In one of his many great books that I have copies of, the scientist Carl Sagan, he says, why is it that if a Hindu has a near-death experience, how come he never sees Jesus? How come if a Jew has a near-death experience, he never sees Jesus? Why is it only the Christians that see Jesus? If that's, then it doesn't make sense, It's a what he was trying to argue is it's a cultural thing. It's how you're brought up.
Well, I guess I'm asking you, are you saying that there are no cases of near-death experience in which there are not phenomena that cannot be explained?
I do not think they are genuine. I think they are simply hallucinations. And based on maybe people are having dreams, I have no idea. But
So
I
if
doubt
a,
very much they're real.
So if a guy dies on the table and then he comes back and he starts talking to the doctor excitedly about those sexy interns that were in the room while he was out of his body?
Most of these cases that you're talking about are anecdotal in nature and can't be confirmed,
You
to
said
the
most.
best of my knowledge.
You said most.
I don't know whether it's most or all. All I can say is that I'm skeptical about those sorts of things. Very skeptical, not anything supernatural.
This is like, I'm gonna say several questions, but they kind of like all roll up into one. Now, you said Hobbes and Jefferson and Franklin were all products of the Enlightenment.
Thomas Paine, Jefferson, and Franklin, yes.
And now, I know Ben Franklin was a Mason. But I don't know about Thomas Jefferson or any of the, or Hobbes, Paine. I'm not certain, but I know that a lot of the Masonic beliefs informed Benjamin Franklin.
Mhm.
And the Masonic beliefs, kind of like the Rosicrucians, that were also very influential in terms of their kind of, not exactly polytheistic, but kind of a sense that, for one thing, they kind of, the idea was that they're escaping the domination. There were secret societies because they were escaping the domination of one particular church.
Secret societies, everybody seems to know a lot about.
Well, now we do, but I guess what I'm saying is that if you read any like Shriner books or something, they're supposed to be secret, or Bibles, you see that there are, there's references to ancient Egypt and all kinds of religions,
Right.
not just one.
I'll take your word for
And
it. I haven't read any of those.
but it boils down to tolerance and acceptance of everyone. And that's kind of, I mean, certainly Ben Franklin had, that in mind, and it's consistent with the deist notion. Maybe there is one God, but he speaks a lot of different languages or something like that. I don't know.
My personal opinion is that if Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and all the other deists of the late 18th century, if they could have lived long enough to know about Darwin's theory of evolution, I think they would have given up deism as well. But remember, they lived before that. So they discarded a lot of religion, they just didn't discard all of it.
Hi, I'm a longtime member of Freedom From, which is what I call Freedom From religion. Freedom From. In their attempts, first they, as you stated, they attempt to get the religious material out of a school, or in this case, the Winter Solstice, as part of being allowed into the courthouse or the state capitol building. They're now, and I always get a kick out of this when I read about the last couple of years, they've been trying, I guess for longer than that, to get the Gideons to quit distributing Bibles to schools. And they've tried to get Freedom From Religion information given out also, since they will not stop. The schools
Right.
will not stop allowing it.
That's
so they're
right.
trying to get information from Freedom From into the schools. And so now they're supporting the Satanists who have come up with a coloring book and are trying to get that into the schools, and now that is getting the schools to stop, to get rid of all of them. So they certainly don't want that given out.
I don't think the Freedom from Religion Foundation is actually supporting the Satanists.
Well, no, they're not supporting them.
Because I want you all to understand this, atheists don't believe in Satan either. Okay, we don't believe in anything supernatural. That includes angels, demons, devils, Satan, you name it, okay?
But they're supporting their right to put something in.
But yes, they're supporting their right. They say, well, if the Gideons can give out Bibles, then everybody else ought to be able to give out something. By the way, on that same topic, I don't know if you heard, there was a city council, I think it was in Arizona, that were having Christian prayers before every city council meeting, and so they were called on the carpet by someone. I don't remember if it was the FFRF or somebody, about equal time. And so when the Satanists stepped forward and they wanted to talk, suddenly they decided they could do without any invocations. And so they don't do anything like that now, which I think suits most atheists just fine, because I don't think we need to have prayers before any sort of governmental meeting. But again, that's, holding church service on the public dime, which I disagree with.
Oh, something supernatural just happened.
What's that?
That was my question. Have you been to the city council meetings?
Have I been to a city council meeting?
Yeah, the ones in Dallas.
I don't live in Dallas, so I don't go to those meetings.
Yeah, it's like.
I don't know what they do in Dallas.
Well,
I know what they do where I
What they
live.
do, they get a black preacher and they get the word Jesus in there.
Yeah,
They read the word Jesus in there because it's kind of like risque.
yeah.
Then every fifth or sixth time they get a Muslim preacher or a Hindu, but mostly.
So they are diversifying, is what you're telling me.
No, not really.
Once in a
There are
while.
different versions of Jesus, but you ought to go down there. That's closer to home.
Okay.
Dallas City Council does have rabbis pray occasionally.
Do they?
Yeah, so I would say there is at least diversity there. I wanted to actually question you. Obviously you have a deep feeling, a position What do you see as the evils or ills of religion?
The fact that religion often prompts people who are probably otherwise good to do bad things. For example, here in the United States, discrimination against gays, for example, is rooted in religion because the Bible says quite plainly that it's wrong. And furthermore, the Bible says that gays should be stoned to death. Now, what person here in modern America would actually support that? The stoning
Ted
part.
Cruz.
Okay, well, maybe him. And possibly also Marco Rubio, I don't know.
Colorado has.
I have no idea, but in any case, gee, that threw me off.
Colorado has legalized stoning.
Oh, have they? Oh, okay, I got it, all right, yes, okay. But in any case, the thing of it is, the religious dogma often gives people not just an excuse, but they believe that if God says this, so, it's in here in the Bible, it must be true. But as I've pointed out many times before to a lot of people, and I think here more than once, we can't even be sure the Bible is accurate. I'm reading a book right now called Misquoting Jesus. It's by a guy who started out he went to Moody Bible Institute, okay? He's an atheist now. He read the Bible and he became an atheist. That's the quickest way to become an atheist. Read the Bible. I mean, really read it. Really read it. Don't just cherry pick it. Read the whole thing, or as much of it as you can. And you'll soon see it's full of contradictions. It's full of things that support or condone all sorts of immoral behavior. You have God murdering people himself, ordering other people to be murdered, not punishing other people who should be punished. Moses murdered an Egyptian. You all remember that?
Yes.
Did God punish him? No, but God told Moses to stone a man for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. What a heinous crime. Okay? So, I mean, that's just an example of what I'm talking about. Jesus even said that you couldn't follow him unless you hate your family. And he said, I've come not to bring peace, but a sword. It's in the Bible. Those things are in there. So what is right? Which is right? Love your enemies, love thy neighbor, or I bring a sword, not peace. Hate your family. Which is correct? The Bible is full of all these puzzling contradictions. It either says what it means or it doesn't mean anything at all. And there's probably thousands of contradictions. I've read books about this.
Or maybe you're taking those out of context.
No.
Metaphorical.
I don't think so. When God commands the Israelites to go and slay the enemies, go slay their enemies and kill all the men and the women and the children, and but keep the virgins for yourself. That's not ambiguous. That's not, a parable or anything. It's in there.
Well, I can certainly understand being misquoted. Donald Trump seems to be misquoted quite a lot these days.
Well, don't get me started on him. I already devoted a whole presentation to him when we were over at Barbeck. So.
Next question. Don't you think you're being awfully generous with Abbott, suggesting this is all coming out of his deeply held religious beliefs rather than just the fact that he wants to maintain power without having a single idea on how to handle the state's real problems?
I'm not saying it's all due to his religious belief. I think his religious beliefs certainly color his opinions. He wants. He's a Christian. I think he adheres to this notion of Christian privilege. We're the majority, and the rest of you can go shut up. I mean, that seems to be his way of looking at things, and so it's certainly a misuse of power. I've never talked to the man. I've never met him. If I did, I'd give him a piece of my mind, but I don't know. I can't get in his head. I can only guess.
Then why would you make that assumption then, that was from his religious beliefs?
Because the record shows that he has butted heads with the FFRF many times on religious things, and he's talked about defending things like Christmas creches on public property and stuff like that. So these are obviously religious topics, so it's easy to make that leap, I think.
But you don't think that's just a way of maintaining political power? Because that's what gets people elected when you're a Republican and you're in Texas?
Okay, so you're saying he may not be as sincere as...
Exactly.
Oh, okay, I wasn't quite sure what you were getting at. It's possible. I'll tell you, since you brought up Donald Trump, I don't particularly think he's very sincere about a lot of the things he says. I think he's just saying things to get votes, just whatever, he thinks will get him applause and votes and a higher poll rating. That could be true with Abbott. I don't know. I have no idea.
So if we're talking numbers, have you ever done the numbers and compared the harm done by religions as compared to the harm
You're not going to bring that old chestnut up, are you?
Which, the chestnut about...
About Stalin and Pol Pot and all that
Atheists.
business?
Yeah,
Those atrocities were not done in the name of atheism. Those were done in the name of political extremism.
And I could say that about almost every religious war.
Well, the religious wars were rooted in religion. They were fights among people who thought that God had told them they're the chosen people and these other people are not. And so
there
you
was
better go kill
no
them.
political advantage in any of those? It was not being done by political people?
I don't think in every case it was. I think in most cases it probably was not.
So atheism gets off the hook, although we've had 200 million deaths from atheist regimes in the last 150 years.
Those were not done because of atheists. Nobody killed anyone because they were an atheist. And most atheists are pretty peaceable people. You don't go around killing anyone or hating anyone or trying to discriminate against anyone. Most atheists, by the way, are also humanist, which is what I am as well. And humanists believe in human dignity and everybody's rights and whatever should be respected. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In support of that lady's question about the political advantage of being, a Christian, it was, I believe, Ronald Reagan with Jerry Falwell and the so-called moral majority, which I think was neither, that brought this kind of use of Christianity to their benefit in political getting elected.
Right.
And it was, I think it's vile, and it is, again, I'm injecting my opinion, but it is like one of the most deceptive things imaginable. And that many of these so-called religious right people are not doing anything to combat the horrific social problems and social injustice that exists.
Right. Just speaking of Reagan, he hardly ever went to church. He was divorced.
Right.
And he was up against who? Jimmy Carter, a born-again Baptist. And all the evangelicals voted for Reagan. Go figure. So, it's a strange world. That's all I gotta say. I think we have another question in the back.
Are you familiar with this author called Rupert Sheldrake?
No.
I'm reading a book. I wish I could share it with you. It's pretty good.
Oh, what's it called?
It's called Science Set Free.
Okay.
And it really is related to this topic because he talks about the evolution of modern Western thought away from strict Catholicism to the level we have that most scientists have now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite nuanced. I mean, there's movements within movements, and it's easier to identify historical figures in years past before the internet. You had like Bertrand Russell, you had, Alfred North Whitehead. There were like certain people that represented things pretty clearly. Anyway, it's a little bit tangential, but
What was the title again? Science?
Set Free.
Set Free.
It's
Okay.
10 paths to discovery in science. 10 paths to discovery is the subtitle.
I'll try to remember to look out for that.
Yeah, it's very cool, especially chapter 5.
Okay, chapter 5. Science Set Free. Anybody else?
I think we're running out of questions.
I think we're out of questions.
I get you get to sit down.
Okay, they'll suit me just fine.
Now it's your turn to talk, so who wants to be first?
Obviously.
All right, and there's chairs up here. If you want to be a speaker, come on up here.
You know, the last time that I was here, I talked about the prayer in the schools case and how in my school in Baltimore, we were so grateful when the prayer in the schools was stopped because of the disrespect that meant for our friends who happened to not be Christian. Well, this week, the Pope published a document which says that that Catholics should respect gay and lesbian people. But what he did not say is that the Roman Catholic Church should stop using their money and their influence in order to enact laws that discriminate against gay people. So the other morning I was watching Morning Joe and Bernie Sanders was on there, and he talked about the Pope and how wonderful it was that the Pope had done this, and announced that he had been invited to the Vatican to talk about how to create a moral economy, implying that the Pope had invited him to the Vatican. Well, it turns out the Pope didn't invite him, and he put the Pope in a very difficult situation because we have a long tradition in this country that we do not allow foreign countries to influence our elections. The Vatican is a country. The Pope is the head of state of the Vatican, and Bernie Sanders is showing disrespect for separation of church and state by going to the Vatican in the middle of an election. I mean, even Bibi Netanyahu, as right-wing as he is, when he was invited by the Congress to come here and address the Congress a few weeks ago, he had the good sense to say, no, I'm not going to do it. You're in the middle of an election. So here we have the Democratic candidate going to the Vatican to pander to Catholics and to damage separation of church and state. And for all of those of us who are progressives, I just want to say it's disgraceful, and we should be chastising Bernie Sanders and telling him that we don't appreciate him damaging separation of church and state. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I learned something from your presentation. I didn't realize that God was the Big Bang. If deists believe that God started everything and then stepped aside, well, then God must have been the Big Bang. Or he created the Big Bang. He was the one instigator of the Big Bang or something like that, right? If you're a deist, I mean. So, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be funny and I just fell flat.
Well, as I said, I think our speaker made a good case for why Abbott should be sued. If I'm going to weigh it in the balance as a conservative, yet a libertarian, I would say free speech is more important than the governor's sentiments on this, but I also find it not very credible that there were no complaints. Perhaps there were no complaints filed. But I wouldn't imagine that the governor would be sneaking around down in the basement there just to go after the FFRF. Is that the correct designation? But I could be wrong on that. Maybe he's got a personal thing there. The interesting thing, I actually love to discuss with atheists, usually they won't discuss. They get to a point where they won't dialogue anymore because I do identify it as a belief system. I do identify it as a belief system. And it's based upon a very selective subset. Ma'am, if you'd like to come up here and speak, you're welcome to do so. It is disrespectful when people are speaking when there are all these conversations going on. I've maybe got some neurological stuff going on, but it's very disturbing to try to track two things at once like that. Maybe I'll get better. Hey. So it does distract. The thing about atheism is you've got to really work with reductionism. You've got to exclude all kinds of phenomena of the human experience that just really, I mean, if a person is on a quest, I'll just go back to when I was 15. I had a Belgian witch instructing me in paranormal arts, and when I began accomplishing especially remote psychic phenomenon myself and validated it, verified it, was myself experiencing and witnessing it, my atheism I'd been raised with at that point died. And I had to go looking for some philosophical basis then. I didn't really find it in the West. I went east and walked in the East with some pretty phenomenal, amazing masters who broke every physical law I can imagine. And that's my own personal experience. It's anecdotal in that it's hard to objectify it and share it. I did shoot some actual film footage when I was over there, and some of that's still around somewhere. But the thing of it is, to me, atheism is, it's a really poor excuse, especially when you begin to encounter that there are non-physical beings and you have some contact with them, whether negative or positive, especially if you encounter a being that is so much more intelligent than you are. It can really be something that gives you pause for thought. And then where do you go from there? I had a theoretical physicist friend for some years back in the 80s, Vladimir Litovchenko, got his degree in theoretical physics from Moscow University. Very acclaimed school there, had some acclaimed professors. And one night after around sundown, he began working on an equation, and he covered about 5 blackboards with the equation in his private home. It was actually only 3 blackboards he had to erase and go over. But about 5 a.m., moving towards sunrise on that summer day, he finally got to the end of the expression, and what he was trying to show me was that the high degree of organization observable in the world around us, specifically in the left-handed chirality of photons in living matter, precluded any conclusion of randomness. There is a high degree of organization in the world around us. Whether you ascribe to religion or you worship God as a higher being, the obvious author of that higher organization, I suppose that's up to you. But to me, atheism is an attempt of the human mind to basically put parenthetical boundaries, barriers on the world of experience and the world around us and say, this is what it's all about, or this is what it's all not about. Religion, to me, is its own form of mathematics. When you look at the different religions, especially if you study Joseph Campbell and even go back to such writers as James Frazer and the Golden Bough, you get to a more archetypal, more symbolic, a higher level of looking at religion and what it's speaking to in the process of the development of the individual. Religion has its value. You throw it out, you may as well have thrown mathematics and reason out too. My opinion. Thank you.
Okay, who's that? Come on up here. If you want to be a speaker, there's chairs up here. Get in line.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, boy. Well, and thank you to the speaker. That was cogent and not too dragged out. It was well presented. I think you make a fairly good case. I don't think it's going to be something I'm going to jump on too big, because there's much worse things going on. But you're in that group, so, you know, it gets big. I'm worried about a more general case, and I guess this might not apply to anybody here, but maybe it does. I think so much of today's political dialogue, we're allowing ourselves to be defined by our rivals, and most often by the kind of extreme versions, cartoonish versions of our rivals. So let's take the Christians, for instance, in this example. There are, I don't know how many millions of Christians in this country, but how many are actually actively wanting to do really unfair, offensive things? I don't know. I think right now there's a lot of hoopla about the presidential election, and the reason it seems to be being thrown out in favor of emotionalism, and an easy, really good technique for mind control is to identify the enemy and demonize him. And it's quite ridiculous. I mean, first we have different factions within the Republicans and Democrats demonizing each other as they're scratching for more attention. And then that's all forgotten, everything they say, and then they're the Republicans against the Democrats. Well, we can look at it even more. I mean, in a 1984 sense, Germany and Japan were our mortal enemies. If you look at the old films, which are really available now, they're extremely, extremely racist and totally insane. I mean, you look at it now with a modern sensibility, it's not very convincing. You know, they draw the Japanese with huge buck teeth and big eyes, and their Germans are bayoneting babies and roasting them, and this is you know was effective propaganda in those days, and looks idiotic today. What we have to watch out for is propaganda. It's more subtle and suited to our mentality. And with the media the way it is now, so convincing, and so much money and all the really good talent goes there, we are being tricked all the time. You know, just be careful you don't get too caught up in the emotional football field paradigm. I mean, these issues usually have more than two dimensions. It's not like just back and forth, you know, I'm going to go this far to the left, this far to the right. It's not even three-dimensional. It's a multi-dimensional human experience. Then you add on millions of people. You have to find your own way, of course, but please be aware that right now the propaganda is so heavy to divide us. So I don't want to be divided on smaller issues. My last thing is that there is a prevalent belief in statism. So this is where it gets kind of tricky. Yes, Governor Abbott is wrong, but the idea that the atheists have no belief is not quite right. They're kind of pushing this idea that the modern scientific priesthood, I would call it, has really got a lot of the answers for us, and it's a little half-baked at this time. And that's what that book that I recommended really gets into. It's written by a scientist in quite good detail. So just try to keep your equilibrium as the election season comes, because it gets more ridiculous. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to respond to some of the things that have already been said this evening, and to comment as an atheist on the idea that atheists do not have a belief system. I have a belief system. My belief system is that I believe in facts. I think that the scientific method and science are the best attempt thus far in the history of humankind to address reality as it actually exists. I think that things like near-death experiences and non-corporal beings and other things that have been mentioned here, I'm not going to say that they do not exist. I'm simply going to say that they do not come within the framework of our knowledge at this time. And just like we didn't know about atomic energy years ago, just like we only recently discovered DNA. And I will tell you that occasionally I go to the synagogue down the street and I benefit from participating in the ceremony because that ritual is deeply ingrained in me as a human being, but it has nothing to do with belief in God. I don't even understand what they're saying. It's in Hebrew, okay? So my point here is that as we gain more of an understanding of what the nature of human beings are, what the nature of our planet is, what the nature of our universe is, more and more of these things which are currently unexplained will fall within the realm of that which is explained. And I am an atheist, however, I can't rule out the idea that some proof may arrive someday that there is in fact a deity of some kind, but I'm pretty sure it's not the kind of deity that's talked about by any religion that's on this planet, if there is one. And I'm perfectly willing to accept anything for which there is actual proof. And proof is not, I had a near-death experience, or I felt a ghost breathing on my neck when I was walking through my grandmother's house, or any of these other things. I don't know whether people have been taken onto spaceships or not and taken to other planets and had their minds probed or not. That may be true, but I simply don't know because it's beyond the realm of my experience, and the evidence of such seems to be there's no way of validating or corroborating the evidence of those things existing. So my belief is that in reality and in the expanding consciousness of human beings to understand more and more of the world and the universe in which we live. And I doubt that we will ever completely understand it, but it seems like we are making great advances in more understanding. And that includes emotional and psychological aspects of living beings. So I think that what religion comes down to is essentially the same thing. It's a quest. There's a flip side of what I'm talking about, and that is, it's a quest to understand that which we do not understand by putting a label on it, instead of understanding its true nature. So, thank you.
Betty Epstein used to host meetings of the American Society of Dowsers. That was a very interesting group. How many of you are familiar with water witching or dowsing? This is an example right there of a phenomenon which begs explanation under the current scientific paradigm. But I would put it to you that the current scientific paradigm is not honest either. And I go back reading the writings of Don Hodson, who wrote about Dirac's equation and a sea of negative energy, going back to the 1930s. Dirac was attempting to perfect Schrodinger's wave equation. And what he did was originally basically a complete universal wave equation theory. But Heisenberg had a problem with it. Heisenberg's problem was that Dirac's equation predicated, or you might say revealed, the existence of an unseen dimension underpinning the dimensions we do see. Heisenberg became enraged. Schrodinger wasn't happy about it either, because they had a political agenda at that time. If you read their correspondence on it, they wanted to exorcise all of this nonsense about spiritualism and ether and all these things. They wanted a hard 3D science, and they were going to have it. So Schrodinger's equation was bifurcated, and it became Schrodinger's equation of the electron. I think it's very interesting. We presume that science actually operates by the scientific method. I would put it to you that there are books out there, many books out there now, upon fraud being perpetrated in science, where the scientific method is being ignored. Hodson points out that our current quantum physics, whenever they have a problem with their theory, they just start plugging in infinities. He calls it the fudge factor. You see, according to Karl Popper's test of falsifiability, that would mean that, in fact, our quantum theory has a problem. If you go back to Darwin, we are resting upon Charles Darwin, theory of evolution. Only problem is the fossil record has 11 big gaps, some of them millions of years where there's missing information. You have mass extinctions. And then after that mass extinction, all of a sudden you get the fossil record back, and there are species there that were never there before, that you never found in the fossil record before. So I could say I ascribe to the theory of seeding, that the earth is in fact a garden. If we have a mass extinction, somebody comes along and it gets reseeded, sometimes with more species than that were there before. So I would say that is more accurately what the fossil record presents than Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, I'm not going to counter microevolution, adaptation to environment. There's a lot of evidence for that. Microevolution within species, exactly. Where you get these cross-species jumps, though, that's a little bit further. And perhaps Darwin was confused, but I believe Darwin believed in God. So you have these contradictions. What it really appears that we're arguing here is we're arguing in atheism for a consensus reality that we believe has been established. But real science is never established on consensus. It's only established on fact.
What's his name, John? John, I just want to call you out on being rude to my friend. I think if a man was talking or mumbling under his breath, you wouldn't say anything. So I would like for you to apologize to my friend Linda. Thank you.
Linda, I apologize, but I believe I did apologize when I said I have a problem. I have a distraction problem.
I said like 4 words in a very quiet voice. You couldn't possibly hear what I said.
No, I didn't
There have
hear
been
what
other
you said.
people talking all along,
He wasn't
much
talking
more
to you.
loudly.
He wasn't even talking to you, so
Oh, sure.
These meetings have had a problem. If I'm reacting, I apologize, but we've had this problem in the past where if someone is expressing an opinion, you have little kibitzing going on in the background where people are discussing other things, and it is very distracting, and I found it very distracting. So you have my apology, but do realize, I mean, I'm not saying we have to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but the rule of the College of Complexes is you only listen to one fool at a time, and I was the fool being listened to.
Well, I do belong to the dowsing group and know lots of people that have abilities. Harold McCoy had a big dowsing group in Arkansas and worked for the government and had really unusual ability. He woke up a woman that had been in a coma for years, woke her up. And she'd been in a coma over 20 years. He had remarkable ability for the government, doing remote viewing and all. And that just is an example of the other dimension, other worlds than the physical that we are. And the Russians are really, really exploring that. They have really, really looked into that. It's fascinating, really. It's just fascinating to me. But I started reading about Swedenborg, who communicated with the angelic realm, was a professor, was a scholar in his own time. If you've never heard of him, you might want to read about him. There isn't a group here in Dallas or the South, but on the eastern seacoast, there's quite a group that follow his teachings. And he communicated with the angelic realm. He predicted the day he would die. He was involved in many arguments with many scholarly ministerial people, and had his own ideas from the angelic realm about what heaven was like and hell. And it just goes on and on, his studies. Many, many works have come out from his work. But I don't know, it's just throughout history we've had various people that have been gifted. I mean, Francis of Assisi, who communicated with animals. I mean, that's just remarkable. How can we deny that there is another spiritual world?
Please understand that I was not attempting to denigrate anyone's personal experience, because I believe that when people say they had an out-of-body experience, that they had something that they honestly believe is an out-of-body experience. And I believe that when they say that they had an experience with extraterrestrials, that they honestly believe it. I don't know, I do not know, cannot know whether or not it actually happened. And so it's an open question. I just do not believe that I believe that it's based on natural phenomena that we simply don't understand yet. As far as the scientific method and there being political problems with science and so on, well, human beings do that. And of course, you can't expect for scientists to be perfect and for all of their theories to be correct. And over time, that tends to sort itself out. And if there is another dimension, eventually, that we will have more substantial evidence of it, and it will come to the forefront. So when we say as atheists that we do not believe in religion, in deities and spirituality and those kinds of things, what we're not saying that we doubt the experience of other people. What we're saying is that our opinion is that the explanations given by those individuals for those experiences may not be accurate, and that's not to impugn their veracity or anything else. And getting back specifically to separation of church and state, I believe that the only reason that the United States still exists on this planet today as a nation is because of the separation of church and state. I think that if we had instituted ourselves as a theocracy, we would have destroyed ourselves long ago. So we should be grateful. And as for those who think that because Christians are in the majority, that those of us who are not Christians should simply respect their rights to be in the majority and acknowledge that the Christians who are in the majority are nice enough to allow us to live here. I'm sorry, but everyone has an equal right to be here. And if the Christians want to claim that there's no such thing as separation of church and state, fine. Christianity is on the decline in the United States, and when it gets to a sufficiently low number, we'll simply lock you up and re-educate you.
Any more to speak? I guess we're out of people. I'm the last one standing. I think first I want to thank our speaker. I think he did a great job here tonight. You got us all thinking. About my only comment is this, is that the greatest believer in the world will die thinking he's going to heaven or hell or someplace. And the greatest non-believer will die thinking he's going to be 6 feet under, and that's it. But maybe, just maybe, there's something to all this. It's a big unknown, so there's no sense in trying to, as one of our speakers here, Jeff, mentioned, we as time passes, we learn more things, and we understand it. I remember one time, I guess people thought the earth was flat, it turned out to be round. So we learn more things, and time passes. So I give my speaker his due, and I think he's on the right track. Anyway, that's my thought. And I'll give this back to our speaker. He gets to comment on all the comment here and close this meeting.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Well, as usual, which seems to be very commonplace with this group, we seem to have got way off topic. Remember, what I came here to talk about, I said at the very beginning, was freedom of speech and equality and all that kind of thing. However, I will respond to some of the comments. I don't remember who actually said this first. This is an original of me. I think it was the comedian Bill Maher, but it could have been somebody else. But anyway, whoever had said it said this: atheism as a belief or a religion is like saying that abstinence is a sex position. Atheism, you put an A in front of theism, simply means without God, without a belief in God. That's all it means. Nothing else. That's it. Simple. Doesn't go any further than that. As I also said too, I'm also a humanist, however. And that is a belief system that many atheists and agnostics and skeptics subscribe to, and some religious folks too. And what sets us apart from a lot of other people is that we do not subscribe to any holy text, any religious dogma, or anything like that. We generally do not believe in the supernatural because we've never seen any evidence for it. I don't believe in pink and purple unicorns for the same reason I don't believe in God, because I haven't seen any credible evidence for either one. As for people having supernatural or paranormal experiences or whatever you want to call them, the problem with that is that those things do not seem to be universal. It seems like it's only a handful of people who seem to ever have those experiences, and then we hear about them in an anecdotal way. There are certain things I think we all have to believe in because it's evident that they're real. Like gravity, for example. I mean, none of us are floating in the air right now because of something called gravity. I think we all agree that that exists. When we go out in the daytime, we look up in the sky, we all see the sun. It's there. We can't miss it, right? Unless it's cloudy, of course. We can all see that, but we have not all seen supernatural beings. We have not all had paranormal experiences. In fact, most people, I would suggest, probably have not. I never have. I've never seen a ghost. I've never seen an angel. I've never seen anything supernatural, and I doubt I ever will unless I'm on drugs or drunk or something. So, unless we can all experience these things, then I think we have to be pretty skeptical about those who make those claims. And I agree with my friend here about that people probably sincerely believe that they were abducted by aliens or had some sort of exceptional experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that it actually really happened.
Well, I believe what they attribute it to is probably incorrect.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Yeah. In any case, one specific thing, by the way, that was brought up was water dousing. A couple of people brought that up. I'd like to refer you to. You can find this on YouTube. There was a show. It was in Great Britain. You can find all the episodes on YouTube. Richard Dawkins, the man who wrote the book *The God Delusion*, who was also a professor of biology at Oxford, and he's written many other books too. He did a program for the BBC where he went around testing certain things that people claimed were, outside natural explanation, like water dousing. And he did a blind, what do they call that test? Double blind, thank you, test. And he completely discredited water dousing. And among other things, that wasn't just the only thing he covered on that. So I suggest you guys take a look at that. I'd also like to concede that, a lot of you might think that I think religion is nothing but harmful. That's the way I think about religion. I don't necessarily think that way about religious people. I think a lot of religious people have done a lot of wonderful things, but I think it's been not so much because of their religion, but in spite of it. In any case, what else have I got here? I didn't really, like I say, come here tonight to debate or discuss atheism specifically, or to debate, my reasons for my disbelief and so on and so forth. But one of the things I find is that if you look back at the history of the world, like Tom said, people used to think the world was flat. People used to think that the sun revolved around the earth instead of the other way around. And as time goes by, we've learned we were wrong about those things. That there's a lot of people today who still think that God created everything. And there's absolutely no evidence for that. That's what we call the God of the gaps. They say, well, science can't explain it, so God did it. Well, there might be some natural explanation for it. We just haven't discovered yet. Give us time. We haven't really been looking that long. I think you have to remember the human species, Homo sapiens, is only 160,000 years old. It's only been in the last 300 or 400 years that we really started to make some advances. And one of the reasons for that, unfortunately, if you go back and look at the Dark Ages, is because of the role of religion in holding back progress. I think we'd be a lot further along if the Romans hadn't converted to Christianity back in the 3rd century or 4th century. That's just my opinion. I can't prove it. You know, we can't go back in history and, you know, and figure it out and undo it. But in any case, one more thing I want to say is, first of all, that if any of you agree with me or what the FFRF is doing, I want to invite you. I'm not an official spokesperson, as I said, for the FFRF, even though I'm a member, but I urge you to join. There's also another organization called the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, or AU. There's another good group that I like. It's called PFAW, the People for the American Way. Urge you to look into those as well. And finally, I'll just restate what I said at the end of my original presentation. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me about religion and beliefs and all that, I hope that you have enough respect for our foundational documents to support me in what I'm, trying to put forward here, is that no government authority has the right to silence someone just because their opinion is different. I think that Governor Abbott did act improperly. I hope no one here thinks that he can be excused. I really honestly don't think he's ever going to be impeached or even censured or anything else because of the nature of the political situation here, as I explained. But I think we need to stay on top of these things. We need to let our elected officials know that they can't just go around stomping on the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, and the Texas State Constitution, for that matter. So, as I sometimes say when I conclude my presentations, as Forrest Gump so famously said, that's all I have to say about that. Oh, and don't forget, if you want a bumper sticker, got 4 of them, they're free.
I don't have a car, but you know what? I'll take one anyway because I bet you I can find someone to put it on.
Okay, they're going quick.